One morning you wake up rich. By lunch you're broke. Not you personally, but your pension, your mortgage, your job, your savings account. All of it connected to a building in Manhattan that, on September 15th, 2008, stopped existing and became something else entirely. A warning, a ghost. Lehman Brothers didn't just fail, it detonated. And the shockwave traveled through banks, through mortgages, through retirement accounts, until it reached your kitchen table. This is the story of how 158 years of financial history ended in a single weekend, and why it was never really an accident. 1844, Alabama. A German immigrant named Henry Lehman opens a dry goods store. His brothers join. They start trading cotton, then commodities, then everything. 158 years later, one of the most powerful investment banks on earth, 2 world wars, the Great Depression, the dot-com crash. Lehman survived all of it, until it didn't. By the early 2000s, Lehman had found a new obsession: mortgages, specifically subprime mortgages, loans given to people with poor credit, unstable incomes, and very little ability to pay them back if anything went wrong. Here's what made Wall Street fall in love with them. They could be packaged, bundled into products called mortgage-backed securities, sliced, rated, sold to investors around the world. A mortgage from a factory worker in Ohio could end up on the balance sheet of a pension fund in Norway, wrapped in so many layers of financial engineering that nobody could fully see what was inside. And Lehman went deeper into this market than almost anyone. Under CEO Dick Fuld, known on Wall Street as the Gorilla, Lehman borrowed heavily to buy more and more and more. At its peak, Lehman was leveraged 30 to 1, $30 of borrowed money for every $1 it actually owned. Remember that number, because it means that if the value of Lehman's assets dropped by just 3%, the entire firm was technically insolvent. 3%. In a stable market, that's manageable. In a housing market built on loans that were never going to be repaid, it's everything. 2006 to 2007. The warning signs are there for anyone willing to look. Default rates climbing, house prices plateauing, then dipping. Inside Lehman, some people are nervous. Risk managers raise concerns. A few voices say, "We're too exposed. We need to pull back." Dick Fuld doesn't pull back. He doubles down. In 2007, while other banks are quietly reducing their mortgage exposure, Lehman is still buying, still borrowing, still adding to a position that is becoming, with every passing month, more dangerous. Why? Because it had worked. For years, the mortgage machine had printed money. Bonuses were enormous. The stock price was climbing. And the culture inside Lehman, aggressive, competitive, intolerant of doubt, made it very difficult to be the person who stood up and said, "This is wrong. This is not unique to Lehman. This is what happens inside every institution that is about to catastrophically fail." The warning is always there. Someone always sees it. And the system always finds a way to silence them, not with cruelty, but with culture. By 2008, Lehman's stock is falling, fast, short sellers circling, questions being asked about the accuracy of Lehman's reported asset values. They are not accurate. Lehman is using accounting techniques to move assets off its balance sheet at the end of each quarter, making the firm look less leveraged, healthier than it actually was. The plain English term, hiding the problem. Dick Fuld is making calls. He needs a buyer. Korea Development Bank talks collapse. Warren Buffett declines. Bank of America, briefly interested, then chooses Merrill Lynch instead. Every door that opens, closes. Through all of it, Fuld maintains public confidence. We are fine. We have liquidity. We are managing through this. The market doesn't believe him. By early September, Lehman's stock has fallen more than 90% from its peak. Counterparties, the banks and institutions that do business with Lehman every day, are pulling back, refusing to trade, refusing to lend. This is the death spiral. Once counterparties lose confidence, the decline accelerates. The more the stock falls, the more they pull back. The more they pull back, the faster the stock falls. There is no bottom unless someone intervenes. Friday, September 12, 2008. The Federal Reserve convenes an emergency meeting at the New York Fed on Liberty Street. In the room, the heads of every major Wall Street bank, the Treasury Secretary, the Fed Chair, the most powerful people in American finance, sitting around a table trying to figure out whether to save Lehman Brothers. Because there is a debate. Bear Stearns had been rescued months earlier. Some officials, Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson among them, are worried about moral hazard. If the government rescues every bank that makes reckless decisions, what incentive does any bank have to stop? And so across Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, while the clock runs down, the question hangs in the air. Is Lehman too big to fail? Or is it exactly the right size to make an example of? Barclays is interested in buying Lehman. A deal seems possible. Then the UK regulator steps in. They won't approve without a shareholder vote. There is no time for a shareholder vote. The deal collapses Sunday afternoon. No buyer, no rescue, no safety net. Sunday, September 14th, 2008. 1:45 a.m. Lehman Brothers files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 158 years. Gone. $619 billion in debt. The largest bankruptcy filing in American history. The building on 7th Avenue doesn't disappear overnight. The lights are still on. The security guards are still at their desks. But the firm ceases to exist. By Monday morning, the effect is everywhere. Stock markets around the world open and fall. Not drift, fall. The kind of decline that makes experienced traders go quiet. The credit markets freeze. This is what most people don't understand about September 2008. It wasn't just stock prices. It was the underlying plumbing of the global financial system, the short-term lending markets, the money market funds, seizing up entirely. Banks stopped lending to each other, not slowing down, stopping, because nobody knew who was exposed to Lehman. The interconnectedness that had made the system so efficient was now spreading the panic everywhere at once. Within days, Merrill Lynch forced into Bank of America, AIG on the verge of collapse. The U.S. government commits $182 billion to keep AIG alive. Washington Mutual fails. Wachovia fails. In Iceland, the entire banking system collapses. The dominoes keep falling. And then, there are the people. Not the banks, not the institutions, not the balance sheets. The people. A construction worker in Phoenix whose company had been building houses through the boom. By October 2008, the projects have stopped. The contracts have dried up. He's laid off, along with 11 colleagues. The house they poured the foundation for in August sits unfinished in the Arizona sun. By 2009, U.S. unemployment reaches 10%. 8 million jobs lost. Millions of homes foreclosed. The S&P 500 falls 57% from its peak. This is what a financial crisis feels like from the inside. Not as a graph, not as a statistic, but as a phone call you don't want to make, as a kitchen table conversation you keep postponing, as the private arithmetic of figuring out what you can give up and what you can't. Here is where this story gets uncomfortable. It would be easy to tell Lehman as a story of individual villains. Dick Fuld made bad decisions. Rating agencies were complicit. Regulators were asleep. All true. But the more unsettling truth is that the system itself was built through decades of deregulation, through the slow erosion of rules put in place after the Great Depression, to produce exactly this outcome. Bankers rewarded for short-term profits, while long-term risks stayed on the books. Rating agencies paid by the firms they were rating. Regulators operating with tools designed for a financial system that no longer existed. Nobody planned the 2008 crisis, but a lot of people built the conditions for it, piece by piece, over decades. And here's what matters for you, right now. The reforms that followed addressed many specific mechanisms, but the underlying dynamic, institutions taking on invisible risk, leverage that looks manageable until it doesn't, complexity that obscures danger until danger becomes impossible to ignore. That dynamic has not been solved. It has been managed, partially, temporarily. 3 things, every time, before you trust any institution with your money. 1. How leveraged are they? Any institution that cannot explain its leverage ratio in plain language is an institution that doesn't want you to know the answer. 2. What happens if their largest bet goes wrong? Not what they say will happen. What the math says. These are often very different things. 3. Is anyone raising concerns that the institution is suppressing rather than addressing? Silence in finance is rarely health. It is usually culture. Lehman had people raising concerns. The concerns were answered with culture, with pressure, with the accumulated momentum of a machine that had been making money for so long that stopping felt impossible, until it stopped. On the morning of September 15th, 2008, Lehman employees arrived at the 7th Avenue building with boxes. They had come to collect their things. Some had worked there for decades. Some had only just started. All of them walked out carrying the physical remnants of careers built inside an institution that no longer existed. Photographers caught them on the steps. The images went around the world. They became the face of what had happened. Not the CEOs, not the regulators, not the politicians, just people, carrying boxes, on a Monday morning, in September. That is what the Lehman collapse actually was. Not a number, not a graph. People, carrying boxes. That's what we track on this channel. The moment the abstraction becomes real, when the balance sheet becomes a box on a sidewalk, when the leverage ratio becomes a kitchen table conversation. If this story changed how you think about the systems you trust with your financial life, you already know what to do. The next story is waiting, and it starts the same way every story like this starts, with someone, somewhere, believing that this time is different. Stay close.